I don't have a microphone, so I'm going to project my voice. But I'd definitely like to start out with an acknowledgement of the land that we're on here in Noboshimanong. So we respectfully acknowledge that we are here in Noboshimanong. We're on the territory of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe. We're covered under the Williams Treaty and Treaty 20. We give thanks and appreciation as we live, work, and learn on this land together this evening.
Thank you. So just a quick reminder before we get started, this is a reduced EMF event. If you brought a phone with you this evening, please take it out now and ensure that it is on airplane mode with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi disabled to enable a more supportive environment for guests who experience electromagnetic illness. If you need to use your phone, please step out of the hall and resume airplane, and you can resume the airplane mode when you return. If for any reason you do not, I guess if for any reason you have to keep your device active, maybe situate yourself at the back of the hall. Okay. But yeah, sometimes when you turn your phone onto airplane mode but don't turn off your Wi-Fi, it's still not an accessible space.
So how we do things is we would absolutely like to invite Ann Taylor from Curve Lake to give a welcoming from the territory to us all and official welcoming and words. Thank you.
I'll try and project my voice too. I've been speaking with kids all day, so as my voice cracks, blame the kids. So I'm going to introduce myself the traditional way, and I'll tell you why that's important afterward. So bonjour, Anin, long condition class. Gani Yoda, Shtumon, Gani Yojba, which is our Mishnah plan now. When I say bonjour, what I'm doing is I'm honoring my elder brother, Adebayo, who was that spiritual being that Creator chose to go around naming the existence, everything in existence. And Adebayo is still a huge part of our culture today. When I say Anin, that's our way of saying hello, but it means more than that. It means that our spirit lights recognize each other, and we're of the same spirit. And I think that's much nicer than, hey, how are you? much nicer way to say hello. I gave you my spirit name, Mongkwan, which translates to moon feather. I gave you my Doda. I'm of the Otter clan. My home community, Curve Lake First Nation, and I'm a Mississauga Anishinaabe woman. When we introduce ourselves this way, what we're doing is we're paying honor to people. When I tell you that I'm from Curve Lake, when I'm from Nishkudmong, I'm honoring my mother because she's the one who is the reason I was on that land. I'm still on that land. When I tell you that what my clan is, I'm honoring my father because in our culture, we follow our father's clan system. Our neighbors, the Haudenosaunee, follow their mothers. Slight differences in our culture. It's important that you get that information when you meet someone, because what you're doing when you're introducing yourself to someone, what you're doing is you're starting a relationship. And when you start a relationship, you have to know who you're dealing with. And so when I introduce myself that way, you know a lot about me. You know that I follow traditional teachings of Adebayo. You know that I'm a spiritual person. You know where my home community is. So you know quite a bit about me. And that's a good way to start any relationship. I was offered some sama, some tobacco time, and I accepted that. We had a land acknowledgement as well. So those things are important to us. When you're giving sama to someone or helping you do something, that's a contract. That's a treaty. It's an agreement between you. And when someone hands you tobacco, you have to make sure that that person who's handing you that tobacco knows and understands the depth of this treaty and of this relationship. Not just with the person that you're dealing with, but of this medicine. because this medicine to us is very, very important. The Sama, the sacred tobacco, is our way of communicating with Creator. And it's our way of honoring our culture and our traditions. So you have to understand how important that is when you're handing it to someone. When you're doing a land acknowledgement, it's the same thing. A lot of times those things like tobacco and land acknowledgement, they tend to get repeated so often that you don't even bother listening anymore. But what we need to do is remember that the reason we're doing this land acknowledgement is because of the 400 or 500 years that we've been under colonial rule. It's important that you listen to those words of the acknowledgement and you understand them, and you understand your place in those words, because each one of us is in that place. So it's really important for you to understand the land acknowledgement. Maybe it's more important for us that you understand it, but believe it, it's an important part of our relationship. And it's something that hasn't been present in our world, Anishinaabe world, for a very long time. So doing that land acknowledgement is really, really important. It's as important as the Sama. So when you're dealing with First Nations people, it's really important to understand all of those things that are involved. You're going to be listening to a wonderful speaker tonight, and I am so sorry that I cannot stay. I wanted so much to stay for this. But I'm a full-time student and I'm a full-time employee, and I have this much time to clean my house and get my house in order, and I have kids at home. So I can't stay, but I'm so sorry. I wish I could. But I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank you all for being so open and accepting of the words that you're going to be hearing tonight, because it's going to change you. It's going to change who you are, and you're going to walk away with gifts that you never even realized that you were going to be receiving. It's going to be part of who you are from now on when you hear these words tonight. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Julie for getting in touch with me and asking me to be a part of it. And again, I apologize that I cannot stay. But I know that you're going to have a wonderful time. And I thank you for listening to me and on about the importance of these little things, because these little things are actually big for us. So I thank you again, and enjoy your evening, and blessings to each and every one of you. Be much.
I'd like to welcome Diane Tureen.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you on Williams Treaty territory, and Miigwech to Anne for opening the night in a good way. We're really happy to be here celebrating 30 years of KWIC at the Court of the World Issues Center. Julie, I think we should give a round of applause to Julie because she works so hard. But seriously, 30 years is amazing. I've volunteered over the years with KWIC. It's such a fantastic organization, the range of issues that we are able to talk about in our community and have amazing speakers come in. And so thank you to you and to all the volunteers who make it happen. It really is, we're very lucky to have you in our community, and you contribute so much to it. So thank you. And I know Kemi wants to say a couple of things too. Thanks everybody for coming out, because that's important too. And KWIC does that. They pull people up because they're fantastic.
Important that faith is acknowledged this evening. It Really, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Cool. Faith and I are actually wearing the same shoes.
I know.
I didn't realize.
A Trent alumni thing.
Mayor Terry had mentioned a lot of what I was going to say, so congratulations. No, that's okay. Congratulations to KWIC. When I was a student, I wasn't actually involved with KWIC, but I went to a lot of KWIC events and didn't realize it. And then as I grew up into an adult, I really did realize the important work that KWIC does, and then I joined the board for about a year, and that year was really fulfilling for me. And I know that Trent, well, a lot of universities right now are being affected by the Student Choice Initiative, and KWIC is one of the recipients of the levy. So I just want you folks to know that, you know, we're aware of it, and at least and I see the mayor as well, stands in solidarity with students around that, facing that difficult period right now. And we'll continue to support KWIC in any way that we can. And I too am very excited to hear our speaker tonight. And thank you all for welcoming us.
And now I would allow our volunteers. I'd like to invite our Trent University's newly installed Chancellor, Mr. Stephen Stone, to work with us.
Thank you. I'll be brief because we really do want to get to hear what Bio has to say. But for those of you who have heard me speak, you know that I believe that we are part of what I call a new hope. And what I mean by that is that the next years, the next decades are going to be very tumultuous. Change is not just happening, it's happening at an accelerating pace. And the world is going to go through some very, very difficult times. And a key antidote to that is what is happening here at Trent University. It's happening elsewhere, but it's really happening here. It's what I call the secret sauce of Trent. It's a different way of thinking. It arises out of the multi-dimensional teaching aspect of Trent and the college system that Trent has, and has had since the beginning when it was founded by Trent's first president, Tom Steinberg. And so all of us who are here, I think of us as a small rebel force who can use this ability to think in different ways. And I know Bio is going to talk in the way that he thinks. He's a marvelous thinker. I talked earlier with him about how when I read his words, it's like, you know, you're the sand and he's the ocean coming in, but then the ocean goes out again and it leaves a little bit of change, and then the ocean comes back in again and leaves a little bit of change, and gradually this impressionistic thing happens, and then you realize it's really not about the ocean or the sand at all, it's about the forces that created the sand and the ocean. He thinks of it in an impressionistic kind of way, or expresses it kind of, if I may say that. I think of it in a more kind of linear way because I am a true nerd, so I think it's not just about thinking inside the box or outside the box. To me, it's about thinking inside the box and simultaneously outside the box and simultaneously along the edges of the box, and also asking yourself, at what point does that folded piece of cardboard cease to be cardboard, folded, and become a box? And also, if the box has a vacuum inside it, is it really a box? And if it is a box, is it boxing things in or boxing things out? Anyway, that's the kind of thinking that I think the Trent system, with its multidisciplinary approach, is inculcating secretly in all of us every day. And so what I say to you, what I say to the students is, we may think our role is to either get degrees or to help people get degrees or get jobs in doing things. But no, our role, our day job, our mission is to save the world. And let's go out and do that, but we're going to be helped by a wonderful speaker who has his own wonderful way of expressing his own thoughts. Bio, please come up and give us your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Good evening. Hello. Good evening. Hello. let me start by saying, before I get to the acknowledgement part and greeting and acknowledging and thank you all for coming, just want to say this, that I come from Nigeria, and where I come from, like Kenny, like the counselor, where I come from, there is a saying that I want to share with all of you. That is, in order to find your way, you must become lost. Generously lost, not just partially so, but generously and fully and abundantly lost. And it seems like a paradox. You find your way by finding your way with Google Maps and maps and stuff and blueprints. Why would you get lost in order to find your way? And the deeper sense and wisdom there is that we have learned to think of ourselves as separate from the terrain that we occupy or the landscapes that we occupy. Getting lost is actually exchanging boundaries and noticing that we're not the atomized capitalist units that modernity teaches us that we are. So getting lost is shape-shifting, if you will. And so we need a little bit of getting lost. And so one of the ways I like to invite people to get lost or initiate the rituals of getting lost is to find themselves in a hug. So I'm going to get everyone up. Just please stand to your feet and hug two people so tightly that you leave your stain, the stain of your skin on their skin. That tight. If you let it stay, of course, of course.
Can I give you a hug?
Okay. Thank you. How did that feel? Good? There's no app for hugging yet. So use it quickly before it becomes illegal to hug. It's Indian technology. I'm coming all the way from India. My family is Indian. And without their sacrifices, I wouldn't be here today. So I want to acknowledge them as my home, as my tribe. And I greet you all, and thank you for coming out. You had other things to do, but you decided to listen to this African kid don't know much about. My name is Akomolafe, and I want to thank the Nogojiwa Nang. Did I pronounce it right? Nogojiwa Nang. I was told, my brother James, there yesterday, thank you James for bringing me all the way from the airport, told me about the place and the people and the Altanabe River, the river whose name is the river that beats like a heart, I think. Did I get it right? Good memory I have, in spite of the jet lag. And it's beautiful to be here, and I feel the warmth and the beauty resonating through these walls. And I thank you, brother. I made a new brother in the rock star chancellor that you have. So thank you for inviting me here, and thank you, Faith. Where is she? There she is. And to Julie for making this happen. Facebook goes a long way making things happen. Just, can you come? Okay, I'll try. And there you are. So, I'd like to start in a way that I feel is deeply indigenous to my people. I come from the Yoruba people. Kemi is also Yoruba, and she's pumping her fist. If you see the Yoruba people. When we tell stories, where we come from, we don't just tell stories, we don't just begin. We take permission to start. And one way we do that is to announce. My mom taught me this. You say, hello, and then the people say, hello. Are you Nigerian? Okay, you're laughing so hard. But I know this, I remember this in my bones or something. So I say hello, and then you say hello. Basically what that means is, I'm going to tell you a story. Can I begin? Can I do this? You know, Are we in the zone together? And you're saying hello, you're bringing it down. I'm taking it up, hello, and then you're taking it down. It's not hello. I've spoken to lots of German people and they're saying hello. You know, that is not hello, it's A-L-O, okay? It's hello, all right? And you bring it down and hello. It's like you're saying begin. Say whatever you want to say. Okay, can we do this? I do it 3 times. Hello. Hello. Beautiful. Hello. Hello. One more time, like you mean it, like you're in Trent University and you're not too hungry. Hello. Hello. Thank you so much. Permission granted. So, I would like to start with a story. And the story is from the Yoruba land. It's a horror story. How many people watch horror movies here? Wow, okay, I'm thinking twice about this one. I plan, it's right there in the slide. Okay, you can handle it. It's not gruesome, it's not bloody or anything like that. But it's a horror story. I grew up listening to this story about a beautiful woman named Olajumoke. But I'll tell it this way. Now the Yoruba people have a beautiful earth-based religion called the Ifa system that is prior to when Christian missionaries came. We had this nature-based religion that notices that everything is alive. Rock is alive, fish, sky, elements, water, everything is imbued with life. Nothing is, the idea that human beings are the only possessors of agency and vibrancy and vitality is alien and strange to us. So spirit, animal, humans, we're all part of a parliament of voices, a parliament of being and becoming. And they used to tell stories to us in those days of animals taking the form of human beings and coming into the village, disguising themselves as human beings or husbands and wives, and teaching human beings lessons, sometimes forgetting their way and becoming humans forever, and sometimes going back into the animal world. A world that spills into each other. And I believe, we're speaking about the Anthropocene today, I think we're in the age of spill, when things and boundaries and territories are kind of performing some kind of sexual intimate act of losing themselves to each other. Something like the Yoruba people have always known. So, in this village called Ajasa, there was the most beautiful woman alive. Think of the most beautiful woman that you could possibly think of. Anyone? Yeah, you know? Is that in your mind already? Yeah. Good? Hold that picture, okay? Just hold that picture of the most beautiful woman ever. She was so beautiful that that it was said that when people saw her, they either collapsed or died or lost their breath or something. She was too beautiful for words. And everyone who came for her hand in marriage would run away or just leave crying, because as much as she was beautiful, she was very proud. She was so proud that they said she carried the calabash of her beauty everywhere she went. And she never dropped it. She thought so highly of herself. No one was good enough for Olajumoke, which is the name of this beauty. And everyone tried. For years, they tried to win Olajumoke's heart. The mother and the father would talk to her. Please, just marry this young man. Go with him. Start a home. Do something. He's not handsome. He has to look like Will Smith. I don't think Will Smith was. He has to be handsome. He has to be really handsome. You guys are so in the story that you thought Will Smith was actually part of our indigenous tradition. He's not. But he has to be handsome. He's not. I need someone who is at my level in terms of presentation. And so people tried and people failed, and the people of Ajasa sang songs, legendary songs, to speak about Olajumoke's great beauty and how she floored every suitor, potential suitor, that came to her house. One day, Olajumoke wandered by the mysterious forest of Akeke, and she was just lingering there with a calabash on her head, and a man passed by. Now, all men that pass by. Women, men, rocks, frogs, everyone just gasps when Olajumoke passes by. Not this guy. This guy just walks by and wanders away like nothing happened. Olajumoke is stunned. Like, how dare you? Look at me, all of this, and you just walk by and nothing? And she calls back the man and said, I don't think you saw me. Yeah, if you were that beautiful, you will do the same thing yourself. And she says, I don't think you actually saw me. And the man said, I'm sorry, I see you, but I don't understand. I'm going somewhere, please. If there's nothing you want to talk to me about, I just need to go. And she's like, do you know who I am? And he says, I don't. He said, my name is Olajumoke, and I'm the most beautiful person in the village of Ajasa. And he says, oh, yes, I do see you're very pretty, but can I be on my way, please? And she's intrigued by this gentleman, and tall and handsome. His skin was as smooth as oil, and his hair was beautiful, and afro, I think. And he was just beautiful to look at as well. And she found herself admiring him, especially because he had the guts to walk away from her. And he said, I hope I'm not bothering you or something, or is there anything wrong? She says, no, you're not bothering me at all. Can we be friends? And they started on a journey together. They became friends, and she took him to her parents' house and says, this is the man I'd like to marry. He introduced himself as Ori. And says, my name is Ori. This is the man I'd like to marry. And she, the mother and father of Olajumoke were like, we don't know anything about this young man. We don't know his parents, his lineage, his tribe, nothing. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, he's as handsome as me. What else is there? That's the algorithm I've been looking for. Let me go and be the wife of this man. And so she leaves. And they start a family in the village. And one day, Olajumoke asks Ori, as her husband, he says, but really, tell me where you come from. But he's avoiding the subject. He's trying to change the subject. He's moving to some other things. So tell me where you come from. I come from a faraway kingdom. You don't need to bother about it. I really need to know where you come from. Take me there now. I demand it. And so Ori says, okay, let's take a journey together. And they go through Ajasa village, and they go through the mysterious forest of Akeke. And very soon, just as they pass some rock, Ori takes off his hands and drops it on the floor. And Olajumoke is like, okay, what just happened? You took off your hand. He said, yeah, because I borrowed it. I just wanted to give it back to the owner. And they keep on walking. She's scared. She can't go back. It's too dark now. She has to follow her husband. And as they go forward, he takes off his legs. He takes off everything, his torso. And he's just left a head floating. Ori in Yoruba means head. I don't know why she didn't piece things together. But it's just a head now floating in the forest. And she wants to run, but she finds that she's trapped. She's in the spirit world. And other heads come out from everywhere, and they tear Jumoke limb and take all her body parts away. That's the horror story. And when our parents wanted to punish us, they told us this story. Like, so when I tell you not to marry that person, you do not dare. That was the lesson of the story. But over time, I've learned new lessons from the story of Olajumoke. There's actually a song that goes with it. Ori, Ori, Olajumoke, Lokemi, do you know the song? You know the song?
May or may not know the song.
I'll send it to you by Facebook. There's a beautiful song that goes with it. And there's a larger story. There are many legends about it. But the key, the raison d'etre, or the beautiful invitation here that I'd like to share with you about Olajumoke is how things fall apart. I don't know if any of you have read the book Things Fall Apart from Chinua Achebe. Everyone, I'm sure it's part of the curriculum, probably. When Things Fall Apart. I've been revisiting as a recovering professor and recovering psychologist. I've been revisiting my own traditions, learning my own stories. I was thoroughly educated, and to be thoroughly educated is to be educated away from your own life stories, educated away from your own voice, educated into an inadequacy that tells you the only way to thrive in the world is to fit this Procrustean bed. And if you stretch yourself long enough, you might be accepted. If you twist your tongue just hard enough, you might speak and approximate the BBC presenter who is right in front of you. You might learn to speak English just as well. I'm on my own path in learning and accepting the stories that were told me and the traditions of my people. So this story tells me about how things fall apart, and I think it's really critical we embrace and stay with the idea of things falling apart, because I feel that things falling apart is probably the deepest and most critical theme of our time. So, I don't usually do slides, but when I've been speaking a lot, I speak a lot, and recently I've learned about the benefits of doing so. People can read along or hear, and there's some visual stuff that might be of use. So thank you, Bill Gates, for slides. This is how I met my wife too. She came into our university, and I was, unlike you, I was a nerd. I'm still a nerd. And I said, would you like to learn how to do better slides or something? That's how I actually met my wife. That was my pickup line. Would you like to do slides? But I won. I won, is what I'm trying to say. So today we're living in very, very, very critical times. And there's this idea, you know, when we were small, we used to watch is it the Jetsons? The cartoon, flying cars and stuff like that. And I had this imagination that in not too long, you know, one of my favorite films too was Back to the Future. That I'm very colonized. You know, not too long from now, we're going to be flying in cars. The world is going to be right, you know. We're all going to have access to the same things that people in the West have access to. You know, Santa Claus is going to finally deem us fit to drop presents in our socks to not just, you know, the people we see on the television. And we're going to have snow too, maybe. I just felt that progress was going to touch us as well. As much as I believe everyone around the world, almost everyone, I believe, modern citizens gestating in the project of cities and spires and all that. We're going to have a beautiful future, a future that worked for everyone. Close your eyes for a bit, everyone. Just close your eyes. Imagine, if you will, 20 years from now. What does the world look like? Just imagine whatever images spring to mind, just shout it from where you are. 20 years from now, that is the year 1940, approximately. 24? 2040, sorry, I said 1940. I think that's fast. 2040, yeah. Anyone? Snow? Snow in Africa. Oh, that's 2012, the movie. Snow in Africa, we're in trouble. Well, in some parts of Africa. Anyone else?
Trees.
Trees, people.
People planting trees.
People planting trees, yes.
Lots and lots of trees.
Lots and lots of trees. Thank you. Anyone else?
Flooded coastlines.
Oh, that went dark quickly. Flooded coastlines. Yes. 20 years from now.
A new kind of government.
A new kind of government. For the world, for Canada?
Wherever it might occur.
Okay.
New systems.
New systems. Okay, thank you. One more? Yes, sir. Mass extinction. This wasn't always the case when the speaker stood in front of people and said, you know, imagine the future. Everyone was rosy and optimistic a while ago. Now it's gone pretty dark. What went wrong is what I'm trying to say. What went wrong quickly? When did things fall apart? Why are we predicting doom and gloom? Well, as I write here, Euro-American modernity was a prophecy. And it was this idea, it was this assemblage of concepts and ideas that basically said, we will rule the future, man will be in control. And so we marshaled concepts like anthropocentrism, the idea that we are invested with value to the exclusion of the world around us. The world is mute and dead. We are the ones that have value. We're the ones that have agency and consciousness and cognition and conscience. All these things are man's to wield. And with this Enlightenment philosophy, we decided to plant a tarmac, where trees were, and say, it's progress from here on out. And we had secularity, the secular world is basically the desacralization of the earth. To desacralize is to basically say, it's all rational. There is no spiritual value. If spiritual is probably reducible to biochemical events in your brain. There's nothing beyond any of that. And the linearity of time. The idea that time is discrete, one moment at a time, following each other. Empty, homogeneous clock time. Whereas my people speak of slushy, messy time. Circular time, how time wheels and flails and dances into each other, instead of the clock tarmac time. Now, with all these concepts, we decided to make a world, to terraform the earth, to fit our ideology of progress. Now, what went wrong? The future is supposed to be shiny, it was supposed to be beautiful, everyone was supposed to be happy, development was supposed to work. I think it was Harry Truman that spoke about, that first brought the language of third worlds and third world development into popular consciousness, basically saying that Africa and the so-called global south needs to do some catching up because we need to look like it. Recently, you probably know this, the great and unmatched president of the United States said that, which he called himself that, said that Africa, especially Nigeria, is a shithole country. Shit house? Shithole? Shithole. Shithole country. Yes, and of course Nigerians, because we're educated to be outraged, said no, we're not shithole countries. And we have good roads, we have electricity, we have cars, we have planes too. So how dare you call us a shithole country? And I wrote a letter to Donald Trump. I don't think he read it, but I called it a surprising nobility of shit. And I said, don't mind those Nigerians behaving outraged that we're not a shithole country. Actually, we are. But I'd rather be a shithole country and be backwards in time than be a developed country and be at the edge of a precipice. I'd rather be embracing my shit than be a Marxist, than be in some Marxist fashion dissociated from the produce of my own body. So I'm very much in touch with my shit. You should too. In India, shit is sacred. We splatter shit on the wall, when we're about to commission a new house. So Donald Trump, get in touch with your own shit, This is a process for you and stuff. And I hope you read it, but I don't think you did. Well, the invitation there is basically most of us were trained into believing that we need to catch up. There's the catch-up imperatives of the global south. And the world is supposed to be shining for us if only we kept to the path, the Comtean path of sociological development. But things have fallen apart, and so we're speaking today. Why? Why did it fall apart? What's happening here? We're witnessing what I call the insurgency of the invisible. The invisible being that the natural world doesn't seem to be laying low like it was supposed to in our blueprint. Like it was supposed to be silent and mute, and yet it's disturbing, it's swirling and flailing and disturbing our plans, all our beautiful plans. Climate change, ocean acidification, the loss of biodiversity, all these things were not supposed to happen. How come it's happening? And then, you know, the legends of our independent selves, you know, we thought if we can control the world, then we can control ourselves, basically. And right from the time of Freud, we've been learning that we're not in control of ourselves. We're not in control of ourselves. We hardly even know ourselves. We don't even know what we're capable of. I like how Stephen Jenkinson, who's from Canada, says it, that the enemy of my ancestor is also my ancestor. We are a conglomeration of multiple parts and voices. The wilds we thought we dissociated ourselves from are very much present in us. We're not civilized people. None of us are civilized. There's no gentleman or gentle lady here. And that's scary and risky. But that invites us to embrace parts of ourselves, the shadowy parts of ourselves that we probably have learned to turn ourselves away from. So we're not in control of ourselves at all. And we're also witnessing global changes along with this eco-crisis, this whole thing. I live in Chennai, which is south of India, which is a coastal city as well. And it's, we're suffering from, we're having a water crisis now. Anyone here from South Africa? No, no one here from South Africa, okay. Mexico? Oaxaca? No. Yeah, okay. My friends in, that's my brother Marcelino, thank you so much. My friends in Oaxaca are having a water crisis now. So it's not, I don't know if you have that here, but in many places around the world, water is becoming luxurious. And very soon, air. You know how it is on planes right now? If you're flying, there is the diamond class and the ruby class and the, what other classes are there? Just before it, gold class and silver and what? Coal, okay. Just before it just and you're wondering, when am I going to board this plane? And I remember a friend of mine who works at UNESCO told me a while ago that in his time, which couldn't have been that long ago, in his time, what is now first class used to be economy class. The kind of space you had in you know, on a plane in first class is now what is, or in economy class is now what is luxurious in first class. And it seems everything is shrinking. It seems the system cannot tolerate our freedoms anymore. And so it's not just airplanes or airlines. It seems the things that nature has subsidized for so long, it will begin to take back. Water is now a big deal in Chennai. And around the world, people are suffering in ways that are untold. So we're witnessing global changes. And then we're also noticing that we're not as separate from the world as we thought we were. The Anthropocene is introduced, and I'll speak about the Anthropocene in depth very soon. We're witnessing a relational metaphysics that speaks of a messier, mangled world. A world that is not stable or neat or convenient. A world that is messy and troubled and fraught with irony and contradiction. This is not the modern prophecy and dream we're told about. This is definitely an alien planet that we now live in. And this is where the Anthropocene comes in. How many of you have heard of the word Anthropocene before? Okay, bye-bye, folks. Well, it's not new to Eugene Stomer and Paul Crutzen in 2000. They released a paper and spoke about the Anthropocene. Basically, the age of man. The time when it seems our deleterious, rapacious presence on the planet has great disadvantages for how we live, how other species are living, disrupting ecosystems. You know the drill, you know the story. The Anthropocene is a time of trouble, but it's much more than that. These are some of the things that are happening. You know, sure you know, you guys are an enlightened crowd. You know some of this as well. Ocean acidification, rising sea levels, the thermal haline circulation, the same salinity and density and all of that, and how the Gulf Stream, how the Earth mixes waters together. That is disrupting and creating extreme weather patterns. I don't want to get into the physics of it, but we're witnessing a world that is terrifying. Do I need to speak about the origins? You know, there's a lot of contention about where we draw the mark of the Anthropocene. Where do we rule the line? When did it start? Did it start in the 18th century with the beginning of industrialization? Did it start in 1945 with Hiroshima? When did it begin? But I believe that the more deeper we go into the ethics and the aesthetic of the Anthropocene, we'll find out how these questions are actually ill-posed. And different kinds of questions want to be asked at this time. So it's a troubling concept already, and I want to voice this out, that the Anthropocene conceals as much as it reveals. First of all, it tells us that man has a horrible presence on the planet at this moment. But it also doesn't tell you what man means, because man is such a universal concept. Not all of us are doing this. Not all societies did this. In fact, you probably heard recently that, was it about 20 companies or 19 companies that have contributed more carbon emissions than the rest of the planet altogether? A third, I think. I can't remember what it says. Yeah. But the idea that it's generic, that we all contributed, it's an equal distribution, is false. And so the Anthropocene is a concept that has its ups and downs, its shadows and its light places, but it's a beautiful, I think, in my opinion, rendezvous point for us to discuss how we're in trouble. A flag point, a place where we gather, a site of conversations. I also put there that the Anthropocene can only be spoken about in future passive tense. You know, the way the way the geological process works, the stratigraphical society, the way they name epochs is not in future tense. They don't name it like, that will be the Holocene. They look back in retrospect and say, this is the Holocene, and this is the Pleistocene, and that's how they see things. So the Anthropocene, in some senses, hasn't happened yet. But we're so sure about it that we know it's going to happen. So we're saying it would have happened. That's a future passive tense. By this time, it would have happened. We will be part of the soil in the not too distant future. If an alien civilization were to visit the planet, they will notice humans, if you will, as part of the geological record. That's the Anthropocene. And that's scary and troubling. Just pulled out some stuff from the news. Parts of Alaska have no sea ice for the first time ever, as temperatures in the region hit record highs. This is another thing with the climate change. Anybody studying climate change in depth here? Okay, good. Correct me if I'm wrong. But one of the symptoms, if you will, of these global changes is permafrost, the thawing of permafrost. And as it melts, the ice melts, it might release superbacteria and viruses that we don't have any ways to tackle. Ancient things that have been frozen in the soil for so long, and as the planet heats up, these things might be released. And then that's another troubling horror movie that we don't know how to meet. This is another one. This is recent. This is yesterday. It has this, the book of Revelation type of this apocalyptic. They literally saw part of the Arctic Ocean boiling. This is yesterday. With methane bubbles. Bubbling, literally. And they said they'd never seen anything like this before. I'm not here to scare you guys. I'm just here to frighten you. But I'm also here to actually invite something I hope is expansive. Let's go ahead. So, how do we respond to all of this? What do we do? In 2015, there was a Paris climate event where all the nations, I think all of them save two, decided to sign an accord that will basically commit all nation states on the planet to not surpassing 2 Celsius degrees in global average temperature differences by the year 2030 or 20? Can't remember exactly the year. Yeah, 2030. And so they signed this, but we're failing. We're not really doing well. We are failing it on the road already. We're not, the temperature, the global average temperature is already reaching breaking point. And so the IPCC, which is the International Panel on Climate Change, last year, 2018, released a report and said it's not 2 Celsius degrees that we need to aim for, it's 1.5. And if we don't do this by the year 2030, we're all in trouble. This is where things get interesting. So everything goes downhill from 2030. So we literally have to reverse the course of Western civilization, no big deal. Within how many years? 11 years. I'm bad with my math this evening. And so, basically with that thing on our head, like the calabash on Olajumoke's head, we're facing something like a monster down the way. And so everyone decides that, we have to solve this problem. And the way we do it is the techno-fix geoengineering. Basically, that's re-engineering the entire planet so that it responds to this. Briefly about the mechanism of greenhouse gas emissions. We're receiving a lot of heat, as we should, from the sun. But normally, the heat should go back radiating into space. Now, because we're doing a lot of work, to put it mildly, on the planet, we're emitting greenhouse gases like carbon and methane. And what these gases do well is that they trap the heat. Basically, that's a basic story. They trap the heat in the atmosphere. And as the planet warms, everything, which is climate mediated, everything starts to act differently. And so what we're trying to do basically is solve the problem. And the way we do it is 2 fundamental ways: carbon capture technologies or solar radiation. I'm going to speak about carbon capture, not solar radiation. Solar radiation is basically like putting a mirror and then diffracting or reflecting the heat away from the planet. But if we do that, we'll all get cold, right? If we send away all the heat, we get cold. Who's watched Snowpiercer here? Snowpiercer, you watched it? Okay, good. That's what happens if we get too cocky. Everywhere freezes, basically. But carbon capture is a different story. And I'll talk about that shortly. Another thing we're doing is we're demanding climate justice. Anyone here know Greta Thunberg? Everyone does. How many of you marched recently? Okay. Extinction Rebellion? Okay. You marched yourself? No, you didn't.
I was clapping for them.
Oh, you were clapping for the people who marched. We're acting. We're hitting the streets. We're demanding legislators listen to us. We're demanding politicians listen to us. And so it's happening. There's a lot happening. Now, I want to talk about the problem with these solutions, the hidden costs of these solutions. Are you guys with me? Still with me? Yeah. If you're with me, raise your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care. And that's all the rap I know. So, some of these solutions, let's speak about them. BECCS is one. BECCS means bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, basically. The story is this. What's the best thing on Earth that could sequester carbon? Anyone know? Trees. Trees act like sponges. They could just suck it out. So basically, this is what many people believe. What we need to do is sequester carbon. Just capture carbon and store it or re-engineer it for some other purpose. But also stop emitting so much gases. So we stop emitting carbon, and then we also capture the one that is already in the atmosphere, which has reached 400 parts per million, more than 415 parts per million at this point in time. So if we can capture all of this and then stop emitting, maybe we might reduce, maybe, just maybe, we might reduce the level of carbon in the atmosphere, get things back to normal, zero emissions, stuff like that. So BECS basically is this. If we can plant lots of trees, then we can drag the carbon into those trees, burn those trees, convert the carbon that comes out from the burning into energy, and the other carbon is sucked into the ground into subterranean tanks where we store the carbon away, basically. That's the idea. So a monoculture of oak trees and big trees and deciduous trees, we plant them, we claim land, we plant these trees, suck it into the sponges, and then do what we want to do. The problem with that is it will cause a lot of conflict, politically, geopolitical. It will increase the cost of food, for instance, because we're basically saying, let's convert an area the size of India into a monoculture farm to suck away carbon. And that's just the low end of things. Let's convert India into a farm to suck away stuff. That's what it'll take. But it even goes beyond that, because I think many, if you study this, you probably know this already, that even if we converted every space on the planet to a tree, it still wouldn't be enough. Every space on the planet. If we converted that into if we planted a tree right now where I'm standing, we still wouldn't suck out enough carbon to reduce the damage that we've already done. And that's scary. But most of these technologies are very speculative. We don't exactly know how to do it at a cost-efficient way. We don't know exactly how to do it yet. Some of them are already happening, but not at the scale that might assure us that we're actually doing something beneficial to the planet. Then the second thing I want to note is that it might already be too late, like I've already signaled. Some things cannot be reversed. We've already lost species, people, lands as a result of our industrial waste and activity. Some crabs will never form well as a result of the high level of carbon that will not allow them to form shells in the ocean. And we're still pretending like we can control these circumstances. Did you hear recently that some people decided to give a dollar amount to the ocean? Literally said the ocean costs $1 trillion. And that's our own way of saying, the only way to solve this problem is to do it with money. Imagine that. How many of you want to buy the ocean if you had the money to? To buy plant, aquatic life, the aquatic elder, a whale, or a dolphin, or a crab, to put a dollar amount to it. How many of you want to actually do that? But that's the paradigm we're caught in. So it might be too late already. And thirdly, technologies also have effects on us. And what I mean by this is, we suffer under the illusion that we are in control of our technologies. And it's just a one-way street. Whereas, because we're living in an entangled and entangling world, our technologies have effects on us as well. In some senses, we are the technologies of the things we think of as technologies. I don't know how many of you know that you're already doing emotional labor, answering your phones. You're already being shaped in subtle, nuanced ways by the phones that you use. Have you ever been on a New York subway train? Anyone here? My first time on the train, and I was just happy that I was in New York on a subway train, and I looked down the snaking dragon that I'm in the belly of, and I noticed everyone is like, no one is talking to another person. Everyone is just like this. Everyone. No one, I literally said hello to someone and they were shocked. Like, how dare, like, you speaking to me? They were shocked that I spoke to them. Like, it's like at the awkwardness of an elevator. But we're in a train together and no one was speaking to another person. An artist recently, performative art, released photographs of couples in bed. I don't know if any of you saw it, with them holding their phones, and then they deleted their phones, basically, just showing us the awkward postures that we're assuming today as a species, tied to the technologies we think we're in control over. So it works both ways. We shape the world as much as it shapes us. We need the dough. A baker needs the dough, but it also exerts influences on him, so to speak. The dough needs the baker as well. And we cross-hatch into each other that way. So a complete analysis, this is another problem with solutions. A complete analysis is no longer possible. The reason, or some of the ways we're trying to attempt to solve the problem is to reduce the problem to carbon. As if carbon is the only thing that is wrong with climate change. It's carbon reductionism. If only we can get rid of carbon, modernity teaches us to find a secret ingredient. If we can just get this out of the way, then we're fine. We're fine. And so now we're rushing to 2030, as if 2030 hasn't happened many times before. As if time is discrete and it's just waiting in the future. As if 2030 didn't happen in 1622, the Indian massacre, or didn't happen in 1945, August 6 and August 9, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or didn't happen in 1995 with the killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa, the activist who protested shells dumping of oil in the Niger Delta. 2030, where modernity is telling us to train our senses and attention, has happened over and over again. But we don't know how to see time that way. We don't know how to see time as cutting into each other. And so we're looking for a new goal. We're looking for another reductionistic endpoint. A complete analysis is no longer possible because we're part of the world, not standing external to it. Chinua Achebe would say, in response to Archimedes, "Give me a place to stand and I shall move the earth." That was Archimedes. And Chinua Achebe responds and says, but there is no place to stand. We are part of the world and we must move at its own pace. Which tells me we cannot gain any external God's eye point of view knowledge with which we can fix everything. That means if we're part of the world, we have to give up the luxury, the privilege of a vantage point of view. A complete picture is not possible. This thing might be bigger than carbon reductionism. This thing we're facing might be a bigger monster than something we can fix with geoengineering. Human agency is oblique, and what I mean by that is that we never act alone. We're a companion species. We don't act upon the world in some direct way. We act because we're part of what French philosopher Deleuze called an assemblage, an organization. We always act with the world. Every act is an act with the world. We become with the world. We think with the world. Nothing is done outside of the world. This is an eco-feminist indigenous insight that I think is really necessary for us to dwell and eat. Dwell with and eat. So there is no seeing that is not a seeing with. And if this is so, if we're entangled with the world, then there's no fixing the world in a unilateral Bush Republican kind of way, like just exerting our influence upon the world according to our own blueprints. I am a subject of colonial interruptions, and my people are still subjects of colonial interruptions. But those colonial interruptions, according to the people who came to our lands, were the best things for us. It came out of good intentions. If we can teach these people the Bible, then they'll be advanced. If we can bring school to their lands, then they'll know how to think. They don't have history. They don't have learning. They don't have education. And so let's teach them these things. And then they came in the magnificence of their good hearts. So, it's not as simple as just activating a good plan, because human agency is ironical and contradictory. It's oblique, it's not direct. Solutions are not natural. Many things get packed into the word natural, like It's not natural to be anything but a white man. It's not natural to be a woman. It's not natural to eat without forks. If you use your hand, that's base and brute and animal-like. What's really natural, we decide. Lots of things get naturalized, which is why I'm indebted to the work of powerful mother feminists and elders who denaturalize nature and de-exceptionalize the things that I've learned to see as natural. One of the things we've learned as citizens, modern citizens, is that it's only natural to act upon the world, to solve it, to save it, to fix it. But what if a lot of agendas and philosophies and metaphysics get packed and squeezed into that little box of natural? What if natural is not as natural as we think? What if we're performing some kind of ideology that is removing us even further from the world? What if, our solution is just a disguised way of us trying to control and assert our permanence, hidden behind cute sounding words like sustainability? Like, what are you sustaining? I was telling my friend yesterday, James, that, I'm a consultant with UNESCO, and across the halls and everywhere, it's the word sustainability. Sustainability is the new mantra. Sustainability. As if you would want to have a child, be pregnant with a child, and for the pregnancy to be sustained. Like some things don't want to be sustained. Some things want to stop being sustained. But we are citizens of a paradigm of permanence. A paradigm that centralizes human subjects and otherizes the planet. And unbeknownst to us, hidden behind our everyday rhetoric for freedom, we act out this energy, this wanting to be still, to be sustained, to be permanent forever. And maybe that's part of the riddle that we're being asked today. Are you willing to die? Are you willing to step away from the luxury of your centrality? Are you willing to pause and notice when the elder says the times are urgent, let us slow down? Are you willing to listen? Climate activism in pursuit of climate justice performs a limited notion of power. So yes, greater is great. But even that is a performance of modern power, because our protests are like snaking forms that lead up to the way, lead down the way up to City Hall. There's this notion that power is so scarce that the only way we can apply these things is down the hall, is hitting a legislator or shouting to a politician. And I saw Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau. Is there a ritual for calling him right in Canada? No, it's just Prime Minister Trudeau, right? Yes. Trudeau, on the streets too, like this, And I was like, so, yeah, this is, yeah. This is messed up because, the people are, okay, I don't. So yeah, that's the limited, impoverished notion of power that is acting behind the scenes of modern activism. This is not trying to belittle, dismiss, disparage the beautiful work that is being done in trying to raise the voices of people that have been disadvantaged by global changes, as terrible as they are. But if we are limited and tethered to only a single notion of power, only a single story of power, a scarcity of power, a scarcity of enchantment, then we're in trouble, because the nation state has no clue. It has no way of dealing with this. It's a machine on its own. Even if we get an Obama-esque figure that takes over the entire universe, that Obama-esque figure is still human and is still part of a larger techno-machinic, bureaucratic machine that will terraform the world beyond our human intentions. So it's not simply about being inspired and saying, yes we can. Yes we can is done. Hope. I mean, yeah. It's not going to change by individuals, you know, being inspirational or something. This is bigger than us. This is bigger than a tiny notion of power. This is, well, let's go ahead. So I added something else to the idea of the Anthropocene. Maybe one of the symptoms of the Anthropocene is a rush towards greater control. Because when the edges are closing in on you, then you double down on what you've done before, thinking that doing it more will solve the problem. And so we're trying to solve the problem. We're hitting the streets. We're demanding power we're demanding our voices speak truth to power. And we're doing all we can. But sometimes the way we think about the crisis is the crisis. Sometimes we reinforce the very same things we're trying to escape. And you know, when you lean upon something and resist it, you take on the shape of that which you resist. So in a sense, we are behaving like the empire we're trying to push away. History is replete with examples of revolutions becoming the industries, the institutions that they fought against. We're caught in some kind of weird time loop, space loop situation here. Another thing is the Anthropocene is a time of hopelessness, and it's time we own up to that. There's no going back on some of the things that have already been done. Some things have already been lost. We'll never see them again, probably. We'll never ever see them again. Hopelessness. Not American gusto or Western can-do spirit. All of that is being called into question by the very figure of the Anthropocene. So what do you do? Let's own up to it. What do you do at the end of hope? When hope seems no longer possible, what do you do? How do you dance? What happens at the end of hope? I call this time, and this is what I think, this is my belief, that we are witnessing the deterritorialization of man. Big word. Deterritorialization means a decoding. It's a Deleuzian concept. It means the decoding of something, of an assemblage. We're witnessing the deterritorialization, the deconceptualization, the decoupling of man, if you will. And everything, and by man, I don't mean just the isolated figure. I mean, think, who knows Thich Nhat Hanh here? Thich Nhat Hanh? Thich Nhat Hanh would hold up a piece of paper, I think, and say, what's this piece of paper made of? Let me ask you guys, tell me what it's made of. For $500, Julie will give you $500 Canadian. Julie has the money. She has it. What's it made of, sir? Yeah. Atoms. Yes, good. Awesome. Sir? Tell me, yeah.
Sunshine.
Sunshine. Oh. One with the world, I hear. What else? Water. Water is made of water. Yes. Black Panther, Wakanda, brother. Yes. Carbon. Yes, it's made of carbon. What else? One more. The winning answer is made of trees, right? Yes. There is a tendency, I think you guys have, Trent is a very enlightened place, isn't it? You're doing a great job, sir. There is a tendency to see what things are made of by what they are contained with, right? So we say atoms, we go smaller. We can say trees, made of trees and sunshine. And you know, the smaller we go, we get tiny and tiny atoms, quarks, and then we stop somewhere and then there's nowhere else to go. That is that's a useful paradigm. But there's another paradigm that speaks about how things are entangled. So Thich Nhat Hanh would say this is made of a farmer and the farmer's husband. This is made of a cloud and the rain that came from that cloud. It's made up of soil. It's also made up of agro-allied industries. It's made up of Monsanto. It's made up of all the people who noticed and touched it. Now this is a different kind of, it's arboreal, it's not arboreal, it's rhizomatic, like a rhizome. It branches here and there. It's tentacular. It calls things that are not present. What Derrida would call a hauntological paradigm, from haunting. Like, we're made up of not only things that appear, but we're also made up of things that do not appear. If you touch your body, you think it's all about life. Your body is made up of the carcasses of things that are dead. You're wearing dead things right now. Your car is filled with dead things. The bones and blood and matter of dinosaurs, oil, and all of it. And all around us, we're surrounded with ancestors of different kinds. But what modernity teaches us is to look away from that and find the logo, find the surface. There was this news article that came out on a paper, in an American paper, a newspaper, and I read it. A woman wandered into a shop, I think Walmart, I don't know, a store, and she bought herself a bag. And she looked into the bag, and in the bag was squeezed up, new bag, squeezed in, give me a brand name. Just help me out here with the story. Let's embellish things while we go along. Give me a name of a bag, anyone? Louis, Gucci. Gucci is easier to pronounce for me. Gucci. So she got a Gucci bag, and in the Gucci bag was squeeze note, and she unraveled the note. She opened up the note, and on the note was a letter from a Chinese. It was Chinese. She didn't understand it, so she got someone who understood it, and they translated it. And it went like this: I'm a Chinese prisoner. Every day we're whipped, scourged, beaten to make bags like this. We have no food, we have no water. Please help. And that was in a bag in Walmart or something. I don't know. The lesson here is this. Beyond the logo, beyond the ad, are histories and networks of suffering that we're taught to be blind to. We're invited not to notice. The things you're wearing, the phones you are using, tug on networks of suffering. Many worlds. That bag is not just made up of the leather, fine quality leather that Gucci guarantees you. It's made up of the Chinese incarceration system. And that's how things around us are spread out, distributed, diffracted all over the place. And so, I've lost my train of thought, but I think we're going somewhere. Back to the deterritorialization of man. We're being decoupled. Those things we've taken for granted as central and essential to us being called into question. Identity is torn apart. Cognition, independence, is as if nature is just tearing it apart. Or whatever this thing is that we rudely call climate change. It's just tearing it apart, pulling it by the seams, and it's like we're spreading out. We're being composted. So yeah, I've said all of this already. Yeah. It's the undoing of dualism, of identity, of agency. Even the way we respond, responsivity is being in response to something. Isn't it queer, strange, that this thing we call climate change, which is just a trace of whatever it is, deterritorializing the assemblages of modern states and institutions and NGOs and money and funding, isn't it weird that it might be calling into attention or calling into question the very act of responding to it? Like, what it is like a monster that has come to eat up whatever we do. So that even if we do something to try to solve it, it eats that up as well. It's crazy, it's weird. What is being called to question is the product of the technocratic, bureaucratic machinic assemblage of nation states, organizations, and individuals. Everything we secrete is part of this monster. Everything we throw at it becomes part of the monster. And the monster just enlarges itself. So why is this hyper event? Why do I say it's not merely a stubborn problem that is awaiting some Bill Gatesian fix down the line, some progressivist response that we can all rally around and solve? Why do I think it's bigger than that? I think so because this eco-crisis supplants timelines. It's bigger than timelines. It's not just something that will be addressed in 2030. It's something that needs to face time. Some elders say, and I think they're from Australia, that a mature person doesn't face the future. A mature person faces the past, turns his face towards the ancestors. That is what maturity is. And so if we think we can just get to 2030 and fix this stuff, or before 2030, without addressing 1622, without addressing colonial assemblages, without addressing transatlantic slave trades, if we think we can just get there, fix things up, turn the switch off, then we are still perpetuating the idea that we're in control and that the metabolic rift that is between us and nature is still present. It's calling into question agency. And I said we cannot act independently. Even our best plans are not merely awaiting deployment. Responsivity, what do you do when doing more and more is squared? What does urgency mean today? And hope, I think we're being forced to consider the resourcefulness, maybe, of hopelessness. And so I think, as I round up, this is a call to demise. Strangely enough, the word demise means, etymologically speaking, it means the transference of property. That is, to give property to someone else. I think we're being called to give, to expand, and to be hospitable to the world that we've ruled out as dead, as non-contributory to our social world. Modern power is premised on the dualization of the earth, of the universe, into the natural realm and the social realm. We situated ourselves in the social realm and then used the natural realm as resources. But now the natural realm is like, no can do. We are part of the social. We've always been part of the social. The post-human processes have always been part of what you guys did. You wouldn't be social without chairs or clothes or something like that. We've always been part of that world. And so this is an insurgency. There's already a Trumpian wall between the social and the natural. There's a Trumpian wall there. And there are immigrants waiting there, wanting to come in. And that is what we rudely call climate change. So this is like that uprising of the natural, saying we're also social. So this is the undoing of that dualism. I put this picture up for the title page because was it a year ago as well? Yeah, it was a year ago, but it got squashed under the news from the IPCC. They discovered a deep biosphere, 25 billion tons of carbon of millions of undiscovered species. They call them zombie bacteria in the deep biosphere. And I mention this because these critters are undoing our very notion of death. You know what a zombie is, right? A zombie is something that is not quite dead and is not quite alive either. And I think the world is teaching us that maybe some things, maybe we need to revisit our idea of death. Maybe death and pessimism and all those things we ruled out as negative, maybe they need a new ontology. Maybe they need a new metaphysics. And so I speak of demise not as a stop, dead end. Get off the train now, you're here. Not as that, but as an invitation to notice that life has always been part of death, and death has always been part of life. Gloria Anzaldúa. Has anybody read Gloria Anzaldúa here? Great, wonderful. You're the only one, I think. Speaks about Nepantla. And I think this is Latino Chicano anthropology and epistemology. Nepantla means the in-between space. It is the epistemology of fugitives. when they're running and home is not quite home, when things are homeless, when the furniture isn't quite arranged anymore. And I think in some senses with my friend Jordi Rosales, who is working with us on the Emergence Network, that we are in the net pantler scene. Not just the Anthropocene, but the net pantler scene. The in-between spaces where our stories no longer work, or where we're seeking out something else that might work. It's a fugitive space we're in right now. And so this is the call to demise. Death is not an absence, but a lingering presence. Death is all around us. Death is an invitation. Death is not just, you know how we say the darkness is going through the darkness to get to the light? I think that's an abuse of the darkness. I think shadows have their own imperatives. I think darkness has its own weight and its own epistemology and its own instigations. It's not just a means to the light. Maybe the world is inviting us to a place of sitting still and shutting up and being silent and listening. And maybe every time we flail, it feels like we're trying to speed up in a wormhole, which is a query of speed anyway. So death is not an absence. And climate justice cannot be the only thing. Oh, that's horrible. That's a typo. And I'm OCD about typographical errors. So I'm going to stop on my feet right now while you watch. Climate justice cannot be the only thing that hinges upon the door of responsivity. And what I mean by that is, it can't be only climate justice. I think climate justice is an anorexic, impoverished quality. And I think there are other ways of responding in the Anthropocene that we're blind to and we're not noticing because we're dedicated to power being the thing down the highway. Are there other ways we can be assembled? Are there other ways we're being called to notice, to touch each other, to touch the world, to notice ourselves, as if for the first time? And so in connection with that last sentiment, we are seeing a homogenization of responsivity, which is not disconnected from the stresses created by fascism and modern imagination. Because the system is shrinking, we think it's only doubling and increasing, reinforcing the idea that the way out is out. What if the way in is, or the way out is in deeper? Who has watched the OA on Netflix? You watched it. And I just looked at you like, I knew you would watch the OA. I won't tell you spoilers. There was a contract that I did not spoil some movies that you might not have watched. But it's a good thing. I hope you get to watch it. It just teaches that sometimes we perform the things we're trying to run away from. That a prisoner trying to get out of the prison is reinforcing the category and idea of his incarceration. Maybe in being in the prison and behaving in the prison in different ways, he queers the idea of the prison, disturbs its permanence, if you will. Because if we live in a relational world, then there are no things, there are only relationships. What does the net pantler scene invite? Is there a place for climate saudade? Saudade is a Brazilian Portuguese word that means a nostalgic longing for something that isn't quite present. And I'm wondering, is there a place for grief? Is there a place for grieving the things that have already been lost? Is there a place for seeking and listening to ancestors and treating the land as archive and learning to dust up the old texts and listen to the world that we've pushed away as irrelevant? Are there other places of power, other sites of coming together other than the anorexia of climate justice? Are there other ways of being together that might tear us apart? Because destruction is always a part of creation, but put us together again. Is there sanctuary for fugitives, as we all are? Or maybe we haven't learned to notice yet. What kind of liberation theology with my climate catabasis look like? Catabasis means a going under. Going under. And I think that's where we need to go now, on the ground. I think we need to find ways of being intimate with the earth again. What kinds of political imaginaries unfold? So I have a clue, a hint, of a whiff, of a trace, of an idea of how we might do this. And this is the last, I promise you this is the last bit. This is the last, really the last one. In Nigeria, there is a trickster figure called Eshu. Everyone say Eshu. Eshu. If you go to Nigeria and you say Eshu, most people think of Eshu as the devil, because colonial, the British missionaries that came basically tried to convert the people. And when you try to convert people, you try to bring in your story and create the architecture that is positive for that story to work. And so they took Olodumare, which is the chief god in Yoruba epistemologies, and they said, that's God, that's the God we're talking about. But they couldn't find the devil in our stories. So they just named Eshu the devil. And Eshu is a trickster figure who is not quite the devil, but because he's so ambiguous and duplicitous, I think if you were to go to Eshu and say, are you the devil? Maybe. Maybe it could be. What do you think? That's a trickster. Do you have tricksters here in Canada? Trickster figures in this land? No? You do?
We do.
Okay, could you name one for me? Wolf or fox or something?
Frog.
Frog? Say that again.
Whiskey Jack.
Whiskey Jack.
Yes.
Whiskey Jack. Is that an animal or spirit or something?
It's a shape.
A shape.
Shapeshifter.
A shapeshifter. Yes. So Eshu is a shapeshifter as well. We have poems that say Eshu throws a stone today and kills a bird yesterday. So he bends through time as well. So, but I know we have also Ajapa, the tortoise, and we have Brer Rabbit came with the slaves to the west, to the Americas. The fox, I know, the coyote in America. So tricksters, we need tricksters at this time. The madman, just at the edges of sanity, we need to turn to them. Lilith, chased away from Eden. Those are the people we need to go to now. So Eshu, he's called the man of the crossroads. Because when you've been walking down a path of progress, walking forwards down the road, and you come to a crossroads, then you haven't been walking forwards after all. Because the crossroads squares the idea of forward marching. In fact, I like to think that we shouldn't go forward now. Forward movement is now impossible. It's not forward anymore, it's awkward. We need to go awkward. There's an invitation to fall from grace, to fall from our perched thrones and go awkwardly, limping, if you will. Because in limping, we're having more affinity with the earth. So Eshu, this is the story about Eshu. Now, I was in Brazil last year. I just finished the talk, and they were taking me through a favela. We're going to be doing a project, a festival in Brazil next year on the streets. Not a festival where you get high, a festival where we remember each other. We stay in the cracks of modernity, and we gift each other. We tell each other stories, and we listen to our grandmothers, and we listen to children as elders. We perform a different kind of reality. We call that Vunja, but that's a different story. So I was there in the favela, and I was taken through this small place where adults were doing things with children, teaching and stuff like that. And they said, they're taking me around, and they showed me a rag doll. That's a rag doll. I'm not very interested in rag dolls, so I kept on moving. But a woman found it necessary to call me back, and she said, "Do you know this rag doll?" I don't know the rag doll. What's with the rag doll? And she said, the rag doll's name is Adebayo. And I was shocked. The reason why I was shocked is Adebayo is the name of my father, and Adebayo is the name of my son. So, of course, I was like, oh, yes, I know Yoruba people from West Africa, from Nigeria, are a major part of the population, the Afro-Brazilian population today. So I was like, wow, wonderful. Tell me, why is it called Adebayo, by the way? And she told me this wonderful story. It's this story I'm going to end with. That on one of those expeditions, on the Guinea men, the slave ships, a woman held her child. She was one of the 600 or so squeezed into the architecture of incarceration and slavery. And she held her child, who was screaming. Of course, you would scream if you were under those circumstances. And the child could not be consoled. She could not get the child to stop crying. Nothing she did. And then something whispered to her, I think, invited her to do something that continues to touch me till today. And what she did was she tore her dress and wrapped it into a rag doll and used that, hoping that that might comfort the child just a little. And the child was comforted, actually started giggling and went to sleep. And they told me that story about a smile, a glimmer of hope in Auschwitz, if you will. Like hope happening in the most inhospitable of places and circumstances. That tells me a different story about power altogether. Abayami, for those who are wondering, actually means they thought they buried me, but I am a seed. They thought they had defeated me, but God did not allow it. The full name is something different. It is Otaobayomi, Olorunwaje. That's the full name, because Yoruba names are stories. Kemi is just posing for you guys when she says her name is Kemi. Her name is much longer than that. But she needed to win the election. But Abayami is a story, and it says they thought they buried me. They thought they had the better of me. Even when they were whipping me, poetically speaking, they were undoing themselves as well. Abayami is the concept of the indeterminacy of power. That is, power is not strict. Power is not final. I'm losing my juice. Power is not final. Power is not static. Modernity says power is there, and that's why millions of people are marching over there. But Abayami says power is distributed, and sometimes queer and surprising, and that it could crop up in the most amazing of places. It could crop up on a slave ship and transform the slave ship into a vessel of hope. The womb of the yet to come. The yet to come being creolized bodies in the Western Hemisphere. It could crop up in Auschwitz. It could crop up in a prison cell somewhere. A smile where everyone is supposed to be dead and zombified. And that is maybe the invitation for our times. That power is not so scarce. Enchantment is not in short supply. Maybe there are other things that we can do. I'll be exploring that tomorrow in the workshop. My concept of sanctuary and what I feel we can do as a form of as a political movement together, collected, not some kind of neoliberal individual salvation where we all get enlightened. I mean intergenerational work that always includes failure. Failure as a resource, confusion as a gift. So the indeterminacy of power. They thought they had buried me, but they did not know they buried a seed. I end with this question. Could climate action invite collective practices beyond the liberal project of salvation? A way of attending to land as archive, ancestry as learning companion, earth as vital ally, humans as unique but not exceptional, confusion as wealth, and grieving as ritual. For the things that have already been lost, what do we do about them? Do we just march forwards into solution? If everything is about the future, and this is the paradigm of progress, if the future is so relevant that the past is of no use, then the future is of no use as well, because the future spills into the past. But if we understand that the past is yet to come, then everywhere becomes alive and ready for new kinds of actions and new kinds of activisms. There is a power that is noticed only in the arena of loss, the wisdom of the fugitive, the strength of the dying, the prophecy of the hopeless and of hopelessness. So welcome to the Abayami scene. Thank you.
Thank you, Bio. There's nothing else I could possibly add. We're looking forward to tomorrow's workshop. Thank you for the work that KWIC does. Thank you for supporting us. Bio introduced, he introduced himself. You can learn more about him on his website. Follow him on Facebook like I did. That's how I found him. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. That's it, go!